G'day folks, it's Rob here and welcome to our YouTube channel. Today's clip is going to be a bit of a mid-spring catch-up on what's growing on in our front yard veggie patch. We've actually had a fairly wet week up until now, so the ground's a little bit moist and I haven't had a chance to mow the lawn, so you're just going to have to excuse the unkept appearance at the moment. I actually shot a section looking at the backyard as well, but I just kept nattering on, so I thought I'd chop it in two. You can have a look at the front yard today. In the next day or so I'll upload clip number 2 looking at what's growing on out the back. So without any further nattering on, we'll have a bit of a look at the asparagus behind us here. So this first asparagus bed has got a little cayenne chili in it just down in there. It looks to be bouncing back nicely now things are warming up. I have noticed some leaf curl up the top there, so I think we may have a few issues with mites on this plant, but I'll get to a new mite treatment I'll be trying in a minute. This wicking bed had a few issues with beetle larvae eating the crown of the asparagus. That was last year, and I've given the bed a couple of treatments with a product that kills beetle larvae, so hopefully these guys will bounce back. It's based on eucalyptus and tea tree oil, so far the plants look like they're doing okay. I do think that I may have lost only the one crown over in the back corner of this bed, but I'm not harvesting anything off these guys this season, just, you know, to give them some energy to bounce back. So of course I pulled the camera out so all the trucks are coming by. This next asparagus bed has got a couple of female crowns in here, so we're getting a load of berries on. I'm not too concerned about that. Generally, a lot of people will pull the female crowns out because they believe a lot of the energy goes into the berry making and not producing spears. There goes another truck. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with just leaving this one go. The next bed over is one that is pretty much all being hammered by mites at the moment. This is our black cherry tomato. We've got a couple of fruit on down over in the back there. They look like they're pretty much all ready for picking, but as you can see there's a lot of dieback on the leaves, and some of the flowers, like this one just up in here, they're starting to get a little bit of bronzing on the stems. These flowers are actually dead. They're pretty much all being smashed by mites. The stems themselves, you can probably make out the bronzing of the stem. That's all damage done by mites. Now I think I'm partially to blame here because on this mega tomato cage, I didn't thin out any of the growth inside there. I pretty much will just let it go rampant, and it's created nice conditions for the mites. So that gives you some idea of the damage that these mites are doing to the top of the tomatoes. And now I think they may be a tomato russet mite, which do attack other nightshade family plants like capsicums, eggplants, maybe pepinos as well, most probably. So what I'm going to use to treat them this time around is the wettable sulfur, because I mean I don't really want to lose beautiful hands of fruit like that. The wettable sulfur is also a great fungicide. I've used it on things like the papayas out the back, so we'll give this a bit of a spray with that. I have used horticultural oils in the past, but I just thought I'd try something a little bit different this time around. And just down here we have the Kajari melon. The idea is to get this one growing up here along the frame itself, but I think I'll need to cut back some of those tomatoes first before we get to trailing that one up. These guys here, I'll just hang these fruits inside somewhere and let them ripen up by themselves, I think. The next bed over is going to be this year's Rosella or Jamaican sorrel bed. It was in the tomato bed there last season, and as you can see we've got a couple of volunteers that have popped up. There's one there, there's another one over the back, and there's one over the back there. So what I'm thinking of doing is just pulling those guys out and then feeding up the bed with this 5-in-1 fertilizer, just digging that through the top layer and then planting those guys back in. I'll just quickly, with these beds, we've had that much rain lately. It's around about 80 millimeters so far, which is what, 3.1 inch or something like that. These beds have actually been running water out of them. Not so much the tomato one because there's plants actively growing, but these beds here with nothing in them, yeah, they've been overflowing. The next bed over has an aging broad ripple yellow currant that will be coming out very soon. I'll show you why in a tick. And just below it we have some volunteer lucerne or alfalfa plant. This has just come up out of a good bug mix. Not only is lucerne great at at attracting beneficial insects through its pretty little flowers, but the roots, when associated with mycorrhiza in the soil, will fix nitrogen from the atmosphere into the soil itself, or into nodules on the plants, and when you harvest it and let it break down, releases nitrogen into the soil. And we have some mating grasshoppers. We'll just dispose of those guys. And some volunteer red amaranth. This is the stump of the mother plant. There's a massive red amaranth in here. And we'll just let that four-wheel drive go by. So this bed here also does need to be cleaned out a bit and fed up. The next bed over is our corn, a little bit of sweet corn in there, and we have some warrigal greens down the front. These warrigal greens do need feeding up, but as I said, we've had that much rain. Some of the water ports have been overflowing in these self-watering beds, so I haven't bothered giving them any liquid fertiliser. I'll probably pop in some Charlie Carp, probably tomorrow or the day after if they dry out a bit. And just over here we have another bed I'll be feeding up. This one here will be an okra bed, as well as some other bits and pieces. I might put some beans around the base or something like that yet, but like all our beds, it'll end up having more than one plant in there, a bit of a polyculture. And over in the corner is our volunteer broad ripple yellow currant bed. As you can see, we've got some little currants on there. This bed here, the production from this bed here will be taking over from the other plant I showed you just before. There's probably a dozen or so plants in there that have just popped up all by themselves. You might be able to make out all the fruit over the back. And above them we have our last bunch of bananas that is on the clump out the front here. This lot here probably will be ready to come off in the next week or so. We've still got a couple of hands of bananas left from the last bunch we took down. They came from a section of the plant that blew over in a windstorm. Hopefully they'll be going into some choc chip muffins later on this afternoon. As you can see, our lawn is fairly messy. I didn't get a chance to mow it before the rain started, and it's just holding that much moisture at the moment. I'm going to let it dry out a bit before I run the lawnmower over it. But just down in here, I thought I'd show you the little wicking garden. All these plants have been removed from their trays, mainly because they weren't taking up the water fast enough. And with citrus, what can happen is if you leave them in a lot of water for too long, they can start to drop their leaves. So I thought it best to pull out the finger lime. We've actually got some nice new growth coming in on the finger lime. And I just noticed a little caterpillar down here. We call them the bird poo caterpillars here. I can only see one on the plant, so yeah, I might pull him off a bit later. I don't really like pulling off every single caterpillar I see, especially if there's only one. It might strip a branch or two, but you know, the butterflies are also good to have around the patch, so we might just let this one be. I know I'll cop some flack for that. Down there we've got the dwarf fig with a fruit that looks like it's ripe, and also another one that looks like it could be ready to come off. It's sharing the root pouch with a tomato, but that tomato does need to come out because, yeah, I don't want too many nutrients being robbed from the fig. And over here we have our kaffir lime. It's got, it did have a load of flowers on. I actually think it was worse affected by being in the water than the other plants, so that's why I decided to remove them. We don't tend to do much with the fruit other than just zest them and put the zest in the freezer. There's not a lot of juice to them. So I do hope you enjoyed that little bit of a catch up on what's going on out the front here. Like I said, I have split the clip in two, so part 2 will be coming in the next day or so, just having a bit of a look at a few things that are growing on out the back. I do hope you're all well and happy and that your gardens are booming, and I will catch you all next clip. Cheers all, have a top one. So after the clip was finished, I did remove those Rosellas, popped them aside, fed up the bed with some compost and also some slow release organic fertiliser and some rock dust minerals, planted out the Rosellas back in there, added in a couple of seeds just as an insurance policy in case I killed these seedlings, and topped it off with a loose covering of the lucerne hay just to help keep the moisture in the bed.